Not cut out for heroics. A Boku no Hero fanfiction written by Ended Flames on AO3. Chapter 52. Study Session. The final exams begin. Tenya was early to the group's meet on Saturday. Of course, being half an hour early was intentional on his part. He prided himself on always being early. Right now, though, he was beginning to see the downside of being as early as he was. He'd never been to this particular park, meaning he had no idea where his classmates would like to sit for their study session. The picnic area in itself was easy enough to locate, being quite near the entrance, but there were only a few benches and most of the area was for groups to set up their own picnic rugs. Unfortunately, the benches weren't big enough to seat their group of 8. They barely looked like they'd hold 4, which is why Midoriya had expressed the need for picnic blankets. Midoriya was the one who volunteered to provide said blankets. However, that decision had left him with nowhere to sit down for the time being. Tenya would have brought his own just in case, but he wanted to have faith in his classmates. Tenya decided that it was pointless and a waste of time to worry over this and sat at one of the benches. They could choose a proper seating place when Midoriya arrived with the rugs. For now, though, he pulled out a textbook and began to read through the material. 20 minutes later, the others began to arrive. Midoriya, Todoroki, and Shinso had all arrived together, Midoriya carrying a large picnic hamper along with his backpack. Tenya had stood up upon seeing them and waved, successfully getting their attention as the three altered their course to head for him. Hey, Ida! Midoriya waved awkwardly with his free hand, setting down the picnic basket at the same time. How come you're so early? I thought we were gonna be the first ones. It is good to be punctual, Ida said, chopping his arms. How early were you exactly? Shinso looked at him with the same bored expression as he usually wore. I arrived 20 minutes ago, Ida answered happily. Ida, that's not punctual. We're punctual. That's just extra, Midoriya said before swiftly moving on, before he could defend himself. Right, where do you guys want to set up? What about over there? Shinso asked, pointing to a shady spot underneath a blossoming tree. I don't want to sit in the sun. Not sitting in the sun would be practical. It means we wouldn't be hot, nor have a reason to complain, so we can get on with our task. Ida nodded, chopping his arm as he backed Shinso up. By the way, what is up with Todoroki's outfit? Oh yeah, Shinso wasn't exaggerating. Midoriya shrugged. Todoroki just looked confused, obviously unaware that the outfit he was wearing was more an insult to fashion than Midoriya's t-shirts. I went shopping on Wednesday and was allowed to buy whatever I liked, so I did. Todoroki shrugged. My father never let me pick my own clothes before. Fair enough, but really, those trainers. Shinso's eyebrows reached for his hairline as he pointed at the neon light-up trainers that Todoroki was wearing. They clashed with basically everything else he had on. They're nice. If you say so. Anyway, are you okay with sitting over there, Shoto? Midoriya asked, looking back over to the spot Shinso chose. I don't mind. Todoroki said, and Midoriya nodded and smiled, picking his picnic basket back up again. It's settled then. We'll set it over there, and I brought a few rocks. I thought one might not be enough to fit us all. Oh, and my mom made us some snacks. Midoriya rambled happily as the small group followed him over to the shady spot. Ida, could you help me set the rocks out? Of course! Kirishima arrived not too long after that at 11 o'clock on the dot. Their classmates had quickly jogged over when he spotted them and sat down, happily joining in their conversation about who their favorite hero was. It was a common conversation topic this day and age, and their class hadn't really discussed it much yet. The next person to arrive was Uraraka. She was 5 minutes late, but Tenya could excuse that. Her excuse was valid after all. She didn't control the train times. Besides, this wasn't exactly a formal meetup anyway. They'd decided as a group to wait for Kaminari and Mina before they actually began to study, to avoid having to go over things twice. So they'd ended up simply conversing as friends until the two arrived. When the pair finally arrived, it was almost noon. Tenya was prepared to lecture them both. Sorry we're late, guys, Kaminari said, rubbing the back of his neck with an awkward smile as they approached. I overslept. We were gonna meet at the train station. I decided to walk to his house to make sure he wasn't sleeping. Mina gave him a pointed look, and Kaminari chuckled nervously. It was like a 10-minute walk for both ways. Sorry, guys. Nothing too important, Tenya said with a sigh, giving up on the lecture. At least Mina's excuse was valid. He'd have time to talk to Kaminari later. They'd already wasted precious studying time. We decided to wait for you to begin. Now that you're here, we can get right to our studies. Awesome! Thanks! Kaminari grinned, plopping himself down on the rug, reaching into his bag to pull out a few different textbooks and grimacing. So, do you guys know how we're gonna do this, or? Well, you see, I thought we could just take it in turns to say what we're struggling with, and then go through those things as a group. The whole point of the study session, or the study together and help each other and out, so we could go through the things we're struggling with the most, right? Midoriya said, looking around the group for confirmation. Ida nodded with a smile. That's a brilliant idea. I have a few areas of study I would like help in. There's no shame in requesting assistance. Who would like to go first? Oh, me! Mina's hand shot up into the air. Everyone looked at her. Okay, so I was struggling with some stuff in English. The group continued like that for around half an hour before Izuku interrupted Ida, who was in the middle of explaining how to solve algebraic equations to Kaminari, who didn't seem to be focusing at all. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but Kaminari, you look like you're having trouble focusing. Is everything okay? Izuku asked, stumbling over his words, not wanting to sound rude. We can take a break if you want. No, it's fine. Kaminari deflected, shaking his head. I'll try harder. No, wait, sorry if this sounds like a weird question, but do you have any mental disabilities? Izuku asked hesitantly, like dyslexia or ADHD? Kaminari trailed off. I've never been diagnosed with anything. It might be a good idea to get tested. I'm no expert, but but something like that could be the reason you're struggling, or you could get the help for it. It's just I've read about symptoms of ADHD, and you show a lot of them, and I know it could really help you if you actually got diagnosed, if you do have it. Izuku explained, waving his hands around frantically. I didn't even think of that. I'll see if I can talk to my parents about it. Kaminari trailed off into thoughts. For now, though, I was wondering if you'd be up for trying a few different study methods. This one's obviously not working for you. Sure, Kaminari grinned. If it'll help me pass the exams, I really want to go to the summer camp. They quickly got back to work after that. They'd spent a while trying to figure out different ways of explaining things, using pictures and writing things down, amongst other things. Kaminari told them that he found it easiest to understand when they used pictures, drawn on the mini whiteboards Ida had the initiative to bring, to explain things, so they'd stuck with that. 3 hours later, Mina was sprawled out on the rug, dramatically complaining about how she'd never be able to look at a textbook again. Uraraka was in a similar state. Izuku decided it was time for a real break. They'd been taking short breaks every half an hour or so, as it was good to do whilst studying. But those breaks had only been 10 minutes. The group really needed a chance to stretch their legs. How about we go and get ice cream? Didn't you say there is an ice cream shop around here, Midoriya? Shoto suggested, and at the suggestion, Mina instantly found the energy to sit up from her position on the floor. Oh, yes! We should totally do that! Mina cried, fist pumping in the air. Uraraka tagged on a happy but muffled "yeah," raising her fist as well, but not moving the rest of herself from her faceplant. Agreed. I think we should all need a break. Studying is super manly and all, but we've been here for a while. Kirishima nodded, and Izuku agreed quickly, closing his textbook, shoving it into his bag. All right, we should bring our bags with us, just in case. I think we can leave the rocks and hamper here, though, so just to save our spot. Awesome! Mina shoved her things into her backpack, before shouldering it and jumping up. Let's go! Slow down. Hitoshi sighed, grumbling as he packed up. You were dying on the floor 2 seconds ago. How do you have so much energy? It's called personality! Mina beamed, striking a pose as she said so. Hitoshi rolled his eyes as he and the others joined her in standing. Okay, Izuku smiled at the group. The ice cream shop is that way. Come on! Izuku led them out of the park and short ways down the street. About halfway along, they came across a cute little ice cream parlor nestled in between 2 other shops. Mina gasped and went to run inside before Ida stuck out an arm to stop her. We should go in 2 smaller groups since the shop is this small. It would be better if we didn't crowd inside all at once, Ida explained, and Mina sighed but listened regardless. Can I be the first group? Mina asked, turning puppy eyes on Izuku. Please? Izuku glanced around at everyone else, who all seemed to have decided that he would be the one to choose the groups. Izuku sighed. Mina, Uraraka, Ida, and Eiichiro can go first. Then me? Shoto and Hitoshi can go after. Woo! Mina cheered, throwing her arms in the air before hastily linking her arms with Uraraka. Come on, let's go! Ida nodded and swiftly guided his group into the small cafe. The three left outside chose to lean against the wall to wait for the others. The prices here are so cheap! Uraraka giggled, being the first to emerge from the shop carrying a cone with some kind of pink ice cream that Izuku was pretty sure wasn't strawberry, but couldn't otherwise distinguish. You guys should totally take your time, Mina said, following with a double cone with chocolate and raspberry. There's so many flavors! It's like so nice, and they have superhero and chocolate bar themed ones. As she said that, Kirishima emerged holding an ice cream cone that obviously was Crimson Riot themed, making Izuku laugh. That's pretty manly, Ichigo. I know, right? Ichigo grinned just as Ida followed them out, holding a small tub of what looked like vanilla and a small spoon. There was a poster by the door advertising that their pots and spoons were environmentally friendly, which was pretty cool. Alright, you three, it's your turn to go in, Ida announced, waving the second group into the store. The trio quickly obliged. Hitachi had been the first to order, going straight for a blueberry and vanilla cone without giving it much thought. Izuku had commented on how it looked like him, and Shinso had given him a light shove in return. Izuku had briefly looked at the hero-themed cones. He knew younger him would have begged for the more pricey All Might-themed one, but he was different now. Instead, he'd gone for a simple mint chocolate cone. Hey, Shoto, are you okay? Izuku asked after he'd handed over the money for his ice cream. He'd noticed that his friend had been staring blankly at the selection of flavors, his face showing an expression that Izuku knew meant confusion. At the mention of his name, though, Shoto looked up, blinking the confusion away, before answering, I'm just not sure what flavor to get. Shoto explained, looking back at the colorful selection in front of him. I haven't had ice cream since I was 4 years old. I don't quite remember what flavors I liked. Oh, that just won't do! The young woman behind the counter exclaimed, passing over Izuku's ice cream. She looked no older than 20 and seemed to have some kind of minor birth mutation quirk. How's about it? I pick out some flavors for you. On the house? Sure. Shoto replied, a little dumbfounded. The woman gave him a bright smile and began to make a third ice cream, a peppermint and vanilla swirl, and Izuku laughed when he realized what she was doing. Shoto! It matches your hair! Izuku giggled and the woman nodded and smiled, handing it over. Hey, Izuku Midoriya, right? The woman asked. Izuku looked back at her. Sorry, I recognized you from the sports festival. Can I talk to you for a second? Sure. Izuku smiled. Shinso smirked and led Shoto out of the store as Izuku turned to the shop's assistants. What is it? You're friends with him, right? Shoto Todoroki? She started dancing at the door where the pair just had left. Izuku nodded slowly. I saw the video that's been going around and I wanted to do something nice for him. I know a free ice cream isn't much, but I would have felt bad if I did nothing. See, I was in a similar situation a few years ago. I understand what he's going through right now, and, well, I guess I wanted to tell you that I'm glad he has people who are here for him. It helps more than you probably realize. Oh! Izuku stammered. Well, I'm just happy to be there for him, and I'm glad you did something. He probably appreciated it. I thank you. Tell him what I said, okay? I would have told him myself, but I know talking about things like that can be delicate. I didn't want to upset him. You kids looked like you were having a good time. I will! Izuku smiled. Thank you again! Izuku quickly scurried out of the shop after giving the woman an awkward goodbye, only to be met with questioning from his friends. He'd quickly told Shoto what the woman had said. He seemed grateful, underneath the fact that he was obviously a little overwhelmed. On the walk back to the park, they'd discussed the final exams. I heard from a second year we'd be fighting the robots for the final exams. Like in the entrance exam. Mina cheered. It'll be a breeze! You mean like the ones from the sports festival? Shoto asked hesitantly, and Kaminari nodded. Yeah, those! You and Minoria didn't take the regular exam, did you? Kaminari asked. I took the recommendation exam. Shoto replied. We had to do an obstacle course. Ooh, sounds like fun! Uraraka giggled. I only took the entrance exam for the Gen Ed. Izuku shrugged. I don't think it matters though. I don't think the exam's going to be robots. Huh? Mina gasped. But why would the second years lie? I don't think they were lying. I just think they'll change it up this year. It makes sense. You guys were already tested for brute strength during the entrance exams. It seems pointless to do that again. Plus they'd have to factor in me and Shinso too. We don't have combative quirks, so it wouldn't be fair to gear the exams towards that. Oh, that makes sense. Kirishima interjected. What do you think it's gonna be then, Midori bro? Well, if with everything that's happened this year so far, there's probably going to want to work on something like strategy or stealth or other aspects of heroics, possibly like reconnaissance and things too, though some of our class are already proficient in some of those things, so maybe they'll split us up and have us tested on the things we generally struggle with individually. Midoriya started muttering as he walked, slowly eating his ice cream between sentences. The others were thankful for that. It seemed to slow him down enough for them to understand. For example, they could give Kaminari an exercise that relies on strategy while giving Shoto an exercise that wouldn't allow him to use his quirk, since he tends to rely on it too heavily. Or alternatively, they could have give him a test that requires his fire, but I think that would be just cruel of them at this point, so they probably wouldn't. Shoto looked a little relieved. Okay, well, I'm gonna hope for robots, Mina huffed, but say they do that. What areas do you think we should work on, Midoriya? Well, Kaminari, as I said, will probably have to work on strategy. It'll most likely be similar with you, Mina. But it could also focus more on refined control of your quirk. Uraraka, I'm not sure about you. You're kind of an all-rounder already. I'd say work on all your skills if you can. Ichigo, you'll most likely need to think your way out of a situation. They're not going to give you something you can brute force your way through. Ida, maybe they'll give you a situation where you can't easily use your quirk. They'll probably want you to think more flexibly. Don't give up when plan A fails. Hitoshi, they may just want to test you on what you can do, since you're quite new to the hero course. They most likely won't let you use your quirk though. As for me, well, I'd love to say it would be the same as Hitoshi, but honestly, knowing Natsu, he'll probably pit me against All Might and leave me to prove the asshole wrong about how weak he thinks I am. Izuku's tone was bitter at the end, and his rambling. The rest of the group were silent, thinking over what he said. So, you think they'll give us seemingly impossible tasks tailored to our weaknesses and tell us to find a way to overcome them? Shinso asked. Basically, yeah. Okay, so who's with me in hoping for robots? All of us! We should get back to studying now that we've made it back to the park. Damn, Ida, give us a chance to finish our ice creams. How's yours, by the way, Shoto? I like it. Good! The final exams started on Monday. The written portion would last until Wednesday, with 3 different papers, one every day, and then the practical portion would take on place on Friday. Izuku had breezed through the first paper, admittedly the easiest of the 3, and finished well before the time limit. He'd taken a second to glance around his classmates. He noticed that Kaminari and Mina didn't seem to be struggling half as much as they had in the mock papers they'd done previously. Smiling to himself, he started checking over his answers. He hoped the study sessions had helped them out. Hey, Midoriya! Kaminari approached him after the exam, looking a little nervous. Yeah, Kaminari? Izuku asked, looking up from his bag, which he'd been packing up after the test. Do you need something? Well, first, I wanted to say thanks. I think you really helped me with my studying. The whole visual method thing really has been helping. I felt so much better about that test than I have in a while. Oh, that's great! Izuku smiled. I'm glad I could help. Yeah, thanks again. I probably would have failed without you. I actually wanted to ask you for some more help, if that's okay with you. It's totally fine if you're busy. I know you're gonna study too, but it's fine, Kaminari. What do you need help with? I'm sure I can spare an hour or two. Izuku laughed. Well, you said before that my final exam might need strategy, and well, you're good at that kind of thing, right? And I'm not. So I was wondering if you could help or just give me some tips for something. I can help, sure. Izuku smiled. I can ask Aizawa-sensei if we can use the gym after school. I already got permission. Hitoshi interjected. You can join me in Jodo. I was gonna help him with some quirkless fighting techniques. Oh, cool! Kaminari grinned. Mind if I join you guys? Eiichiro asked, coming over. I might need some of Isobro's strategy help too. Sure! Izuku smiled. Alright, meet us in Chimbedo after school then, Hitoshi said, and the next 3 days were spent completing exams and training. Most of Class 1A had caught on to the after-school training that Izuku and Hitoshi were running. It wasn't like they were keeping it a secret, they just hadn't exactly advertised and joined in. Momo had started helping Izuku with teaching strategy to the others. She'd been persuaded to in the beginning and seemed nervous. He'd noticed her confidence hadn't been doing too well since the sports festival. Ojiro had started helping Hitoshi with the physical training side of things. Thursday was a free day. They didn't have an exam, nor did they have normal lessons. They'd been given access to the gym and one of the nearby fake cities that they could train in, with supervision of a teacher, of course. They weren't allowed to go to the support department to ask for last-minute additions to their costumes, if they so needed. That day was spent similarly to the after-school sessions, though Izuku had spent an hour or so practicing with some of his support equipment, since he hadn't been able to properly participate in the practical heroics lessons because of their teacher. He needed the practice. And the next day, the practical would begin. Chapter 53, The Final Exam, Part 2. Begin! A little side note from the author though first. I realized while I'm making this chapter that there were There are only 19 people in 1A because Midoriya wasn't there to begin with. Bakugo and Minato were yeeted and then replaced with Izuku and Hitoshi. So there's always been an empty spot. I literally realized that when I was deciding the matchups and realized there weren't even pairs. So I decided to solve this problem with some bread was expelled at the beginning of the year. Please just accept this and move on because I changed it enough that there were 20 people, then it would really mess with my story. Now, onwards with the chapter. Welcome to the practical portion of the final exam. Aizawa greeted from the outside of the viewing room along with the majority of the UA staff. As you all should already know, there is a possibility that you can fail this exam if you want to go to the camp. You'd better try your best here, don't make any stupid mistakes. Why are all the teachers here? Chiro whispered to Yaoyorozu. Most of the class echoed her question with looks and whispers. I expect some of you think you have some idea of what we're doing today. Aizawa sighed. A couple of the class just nodded, but the group who'd been studying with Midoriya just looked apprehensive. I heard we'd be fighting robots. Chiro spoke again, breaking the silence. Actually, this test will be completely different! Netsu cheered, popping out of Aizawa's scarf. These new tests will focus on other skills. Hero work is still involved, of course, but this test will also focus on teamwork and fighting against real people, amongst other things. Called it, Midoriya said, and Ashido grinned. Damn, I'm glad I joined those training sessions you guys made. Mina cheered. I'm so gonna win. Same. Kaminari laughed awkwardly. I wonder who will be fighting though. In this exam, you'll be working in pairs and your opponents will be one of our esteemed UA teachers. Isn't that fabulous? Netsu cheered with what looked like an excited grin on his face, but you could never truly be sure. We're fighting teachers! Uraraka cried, glancing around at the others. They all looked vaguely horrified. Additionally, your pairs and opponents have already been chosen by me. Aizawa continued. You were paired based on several different factors, such as skill sets, fighting styles, grade, and personal relationships. Here are the teams and opponents in order. Netsu cheered. Sato and Kirishima will be against Cementos. Hey! Kirishima grinned, reaching to high-five Sato. We got this, man! Asui and Tokoyami against Ectoplasm. The pair shared a nod. They'd make a great team. Ida and Ochiro against Power Loader. Ida glanced at Midoriya. He had been right. Power Loader would be able to set something up to make it difficult to use his quirk. Aoyama and Uraraka against 13. We will shine, mademoiselle. Aoyama cheered. Uraraka joined the cheer a little half-heartedly, struggling to find the motivation. Todoroki and Shinso against Eraserhead. Damn, really? Is this some kind of sick favoritism or something? Shinso sighed. Todoroki nodded with a small smile. It was just as you said, Izuku. Shoto sighed. Midoriya gave them a reassuring smile and a thumbs up. Shinso just rolled his eyes. Ashido and Kaminari against myself. Really? Ashido cried. Natsu, like the principal? Are you serious? We are gonna solve but fail. Kaminari groaned. No summer camp for us. You guys will do fine. Midori attempted to psych them up. Just remember what I told you. He'll leave you a way to get out of it. We'll do our best. Mina fist pumped, and with an obviously forced grin on her face. Chiro and Koda against present Mike. This'll be a blast. Chiro grinned. Jochi and Hagakure versus Snipe. Ooh, yay, we get to work together. Hagakure's gloves waved around in the air next to Jochi. One could only assume she was excited. We can be stealth duo. Since there is an odd number because of that student Eraserhead expelled at the beginning of the year, we're giving you, Zero, the option to join Uraraka and Aoyama's team, or alternatively, work on your own against Midnight. I think I'll go with the 3, thanks, sir. Zero said awkwardly, rubbing his neck. Alright, then that's settled. Netsu grinned. And our final team, Midoriya and Yorozu, will be against. There was a smash, and when the dust cleared, All Might was standing there in his signature pose, with a wide grin on his face. Me! Will we fighting All Might? Momo gasped, looking over at Izuku with wide eyes. The boy had a small smile on his face. Called it, he said again. Momo moved to join him off as the others gravitated towards their partners. How are you so calm? She asked. Well, I sort of figured this would happen. I kind of figured this would happen. Izuku looked nervously up at her. I guess the exam would be different, and this is exactly what I expected from Netsu, so I already have a few plans, but I also maybe forgot that teamwork might be a factor in all of this. So all the plans I made are basically useless because I'm with you, but that means we can make a better one that'll probably have way better chances of working. You think so? This is the #1 hero we're facing. It seems hopeless. I am sure you're thinking that you're faced with a situation that's nearly impossible. All Might yelled for their attention, searching in his pockets for an embarrassingly long moment before pulling out a set of weighted wristbands. That's why we'll be wearing these lovely accessories that were made for us by the support course. They're ultra compressed weights that add up to about half our body weight. We'll be wearing these during the matches to handicap ourselves. There was a contest in the support course to design these, and young Hatsume came out on top. Oh, hey, good for Hatsume. Izuku smiled as All Might complained about the weights being heavier than he thought. As for the actual exam, each of the pairs will be giving half an hour. You'll be taking the exams in order for your teams, in order of the teams you were called out. So Kirishima and Sato will be first. Netsu continued to explain. We've set up a different stage for each of your exams. Oh man, Kirishima sighed. To pass, you'll either have to handcuff your opponent using these. The principal held up a set of modified handcuffs. Or if one of you managed to make it out of the escape gate at your arena. So we win by capturing our opponent or running away, Kaminari asked. Isn't it bad to run away from a fight, though? Actually, it's not, despite society heavily criticizing heroes for backing down from a situation. It can be the best course of action to run and get help. Izuku piped up, glancing at Ida as he spoke. There's nothing wrong with knowing the extent of your abilities, and there's no shame in needing help. Running for help is almost always a viable strategy during villain attacks. especially if you're outmatched, because chances are without you'll just get yourself killed.
Thanks, problem child. Aizawa sighed. Now you can use the time before your own battle to strategize or watch the other teams from the viewing room. Ugh. Kirishima, Sato, you're up. That'll be all. I need a nap.
Hey, Momo? Izuku asked tentatively as teams started making their way towards the building where they'd be waiting for their turn. Yes? His partner asked. What is it? Well, since we will be going last, we're going to have a lot of time to strategize. I was wondering if we could go to the viewing room. I was hoping to watch a few of the matches. I think that'll be okay, she nodded. We're going to have a few hours to spare regardless as the teams use the full time. Which matches did you want to watch? I was hoping to watch Shoto and Hitoshi's exams, and Ichigo's. Izuku said, looking down. Oh, it might be good to just stay in the viewing room, too. We could just take inspiration from other matches, and I'm sure we'll be able to strategize there. Sounds like a plan. Momo smiled. I'd actually quite like to watch Chiro's match myself, but hers right near the end. That's okay. I'd like to watch Kaminari and Mina's match too. So maybe we can take a break to strategize during Uraraka and Hagakure's match? Izuku said, we're wasting time. We should get to the viewing room before the match starts. Alright, I'm okay with doing that. Momo smiled. Let's go. Oh hey, Uraraka, Sero, you guys are here too. Izuku smiled as he pushed open the door to the viewing room, holding it open for Momo before walking in himself. Yeah, we wanted to watch the others' matches for inspiration or something. Aoyama's kinda preoccupied with himself. Zero grinned. I think the cat just seriously jumped into the door. Anyway. What are you guys doing here anyway? I thought you'd be strategizing, Uraraka asked, looking at them curiously. I wanted to watch Ichigo's match, Izuku admitted. Besides, we'll be going last, Momo reasoned. We'll have more than enough time to come up with a strategy. Fair enough. Ooh, it's starting! As soon as the match began, the pair began to walk forward. Ichigo wasn't sure what to expect here. It looked like an easy win at first glance. Keeping Izuku's advice in mind, though, he knew it wouldn't be so easy. They wouldn't have given him a test he can't just smash his way through. It wouldn't be a test that way. Sato didn't seem to realize the same thing, however.
This is going to be easy as cake,
Sato cheered.
We're just gonna smash straight through the front, right? Destroy whatever walls he creates.
No! Ichigo sighed. Sato turned to look at him, a bag of sugar halfway to his lips. It's not gonna be that easy.
What do you think's gonna happen then?
Sato tilted his head in confusion. Come on, we should get out of sight first. Then we can make a plan.
Right.
The pair veered off from the main path and looked into the winding alleyways between the buildings. Ichigo poked his head out of an opening just to see Cementos had arrived to the main road. The teacher was looking around, probably trying to find them. Okay, we can still do this, Ichigo said, determined. We just need to think ahead. Right, there's no testing us on the things we already know we can do. They're testing our ability to think quickly. We need a strategy.
Alright, Sato nodded. I get it, so we're not just gonna win by brute forcing it, which has been both our main strategy so far this year. It makes sense. Does Cementos have any weaknesses you know of?
Well, the cement is heavy, right?
so he might not be able to move or react too quickly. He mainly focuses on defense, which means we'd probably need to launch a surprise attack before he sees us.
And what if that fails?
We try for the exit.
Ichigo shrugs.
If it fails, he'll know our strategy, so we can't try again. Our best bet after that would be to run for help.
Sato nodded along.
Okay, we should probably go soon. We don't want to run out of time.
Yeah, man. Okay, so the surprise attack. It would make sense if one of us acted as bait. Then the other snuck up from behind and handcuffed him while he's focused. It would probably be better if I'm the bait, since you can escape faster if you need to.
Right, okay, I can do that, man.
Sato nodded, taking the handcuffs.
You're just gonna go out there and pretend to try and brute force it?
Basically, yeah, but try to handcuff him quickly. I don't know how long my hardening can hold out against cement.
I will do. Good luck, Kirishima.
Sato grinned, raising his fist.
We've got this easy.
Ichigo grinned, bumping his partner's fist before turning and running from the alleyway. He glanced back to see Sato disappear around the corner. Suddenly it was just him and Cementos, erupted into a fighting stance.
Oh, good. You finally come out to face me,
Cementos said, putting his hands on the ground.
Let's see how well you fare.
A cement wall built itself up right in front of him, just as he'd expected. Ichigo smashed through it with a hardened arm. Without too much effort, but he'd barely made it a step forward before another wall popped up for him to smash with a yell of determination. Only a minute later, Ichigo could see why this plan wouldn't have worked. He'd barely made it 10 meters forward, and he probably would have made it further if Sato had been doing it with him, but he had to have faith that he'd be doing his part of the plan. He could feel himself tiring already. He wasn't about to give up, though. Sato hadn't gotten the handcuffs on Cementos yet, which meant he was either still trying or had already gone for the exit. Ichiro realized a signal would have probably been useful in this situation, but they didn't have a signal, so Ichiro would just have to keep powering forward until the match was declared over, which thankfully it was. Only moments later, Sato had managed to sneak up on Cementos and snap the handcuffs around his wrists before a wall could shoot up around them. Ichigo sighed in relief, rubbing his slightly bruised hand. His hardening had just begun to wear off.
Hey man, we did it!
Sato cheered as they exited the stage, high-fiving his partner.
That was awesome! Yeah, dude, I can't believe we passed.
Ichigo grinned.
I was getting a little worried at the end there.
Match 2! Tsuyu Asui and Fumikage Tokoyami versus Exoplasm. Begin! Chapter 54 Final Exams, Part 3. Float to Victory! Okay, so Aoyama, Sego, we didn't really plan all that much. Ochako sighed as the trio sat together on the bus heading for their exam. They were lucky that 13 would be arriving separately.
Oui?
Aoyama nodded. Do either of you have any magnifique ideas?
Oh, well, I'm not sure if that'll work, but what if we do something like Kirishima and Sato did?
Sego suggested.
Bait 13 into fighting two of us while the other sneaks up and handcuffs them.
Ooh, that could work! Ochako cheered. Sego, do you think you could, tape up their black hole? Caps? So they can't open them? It would make it easier for us if we aren't fighting their quirk.
I could try. Sego smiled optimistically. Otherwise, I could use parts of my tape to stick their arms together and mess up their mobility or something. Maybe Aoyama, you could help by distracting them from your laser?
Aoyama looked pensive and maybe a little scared, thinking for a second before answering a quiet, "Oui."
Awesome! Sego grinned. We can totally do this, you guys.
I shall be a dazzling distraction. Aoyama joined the cheer. Yay! Ochako grinned. We're gonna pass. Alright, there's not much cover, Ochako quickly observed as they approached the gate. That would probably be a problem, which means I probably won't have much of a chance of using my quirk.
Does that matter?
Sego said, his voice full of confidence.
As long as you manage to sneak around, you won't need your quirk to handcuff 13. Aoyama, you remember the plan?
Oui, mademoiselle. Aoyama nodded. Let's do this then. Ochako smiled to her team, her tone determined. Begin! The way too optimistic sounding machine voice called out. The three nodded to each other before splitting off. Sego and Aoyama headed together towards the center of the stage, while Uraraka hung back for a few seconds before scuttling off to the side. The lack of cover definitely wasn't optimal, but she'd have to make do with what she had. She stayed as silent as possible as she crept around, using the small amount of cover available to her advantage. During her internship, Gunhead had mainly focused on martial arts, not stealth. That didn't mean she'd done nothing, though. He'd made sure to give her some tips that she'd use to her advantage. The sounds of the beginnings of the battle met her ears as she continued to sneak, keeping low to the ground. She took a chance to glance around. From the noise, she knew that Sego and Aoyama had probably come into contact with 13. Bright flashes coming from a raised platform near the center of the field that she recognized as Aoyama's quirk gave her a good indication of where they were. Good, she thought, clutching the handcuffs close to her as she snuck closer to the platform. She needed to find a way up without being noticed. Around the back of the platform, she found a ladder with broken rungs. Pretty useless at first glance, since she was too short to even grab the bottom intact one. Looking around, there seemed to be nothing that she could stand on to reach it either. Damn it! Of course, she could use her quirk on herself. It wasn't that far to float up after all, and then she'd be able to pull herself up too. The problem with that was the fact that using her quirk on herself still made her nauseous, and she didn't want to ruin her teammates' chances. Above her, she heard the familiar sound of Aoyama's laser being fired off, quickly followed by another sound she'd heard so often from all the videos she watched. 13's quirk. So Sero hadn't been able to take their finger caps shut. Quickly, she realized that she'd be just as unhelpful sitting down here with doing nothing than if she got too nauseous to fight. At least if she was up there, she could maybe distract for long enough that her teammates could run for the exit. Plan A comes first, though. Silently, she used her quirk on herself and gritted her teeth, the sudden feeling of weightlessness. Shaking her head to rid herself of the woozy feeling that was slowly creeping in, Ochako pushed off the ground. Her hands met the first rung easily and she quickly began to climb. It was much easier to pull herself up the ladder than it would have been without her quirk. The sounds the rungs make were making, as she put hardly any weight of them at all, it was much less dangerous too. Besides, even if she wanted to, she couldn't release her quirk without risking falling from the ladder. It was something she couldn't risk. The sound would draw attention to her, and she probably wouldn't be able to use her quirk on herself to get back up, regardless if 13 noticed her or not. Instead, she just grit her teeth in response to the way her stomach rolled uncomfortably. A sign she should release her quirk, and continued upwards. Reaching the top of the ladder, she quickly braced her elbows on the concrete rim of the ladder that the ladder was fixed to, so she wouldn't fall, and released her quirk with a sigh of relief. After hurriedly making sure she wasn't going to fall from the ladder, Ochako allowed herself to assess the situation. 13 was trapped in place by tape that covered one of their feet. They didn't seem bothered though, as they attempted to capture Sego in the suction of their quirk. Meanwhile, her teammate was using his tape to fling himself out of the way. Aoyama was clutching one of the barrier railings, clutching his stomach with a queasy look on his face. Ochako internally cringed. She knew that look. It wasn't a nice feeling. Sego noticed her peeking up from behind the railing and immediately turned back on himself to draw 13's attention in their other direction, so they wouldn't see her. Clutching the handcuffs and readying them to snap around 13's ankle, she was pretty sure that was a viable strategy. Ochako pulled herself up and slipped between the bars of the railing. Keeping close to the ground, Ochako ran towards their teacher. Aoyama noticed her and swallowed, turning to pose and fire off his laser again as 13 started to turn. Their teacher aimed their quirk at Aoyama, quickly sucking up the sparkling laser before starting to pull in the boy himself. He yelped before tape wrapped around his middle and dragged him back. The interaction quickly became a tug of war. Sego was holding onto the railings to stop himself being pulled in by Black Hole, while keeping hold of the tape, stopping Aoyama from barreling towards the hero, while both hoped Ochako would be able to cuff 13 in time. Ochako lunged, slapping the handcuffs around 13's ankle. Just as Sego's grip on the railing slipped, 13 shut off their quirk at the same time. The mechanical voice announced that they had passed, and all 3 students tumbled to the floor. "You were cutting that close, Uraraka," Sego said, the grin on his face showing that he wasn't really mad. Ochako sighed in relief, rolling onto her back. "Yeah, but we passed," she grinned. "You 3 did well," 13 told them. Ochako lit up at the praise of her favorite hero. "You can go back to the other team's matches now, or you should see Recovery Girl if any of you are injured. The bus should be waiting." "Thank you, 13 Sensei," Ochako answered, immediately standing up and walking over to Aoyama, who was clutching his stomach and leaning on the railing for support and offering her assistance. "You can lean on me while we walk back to the buses if you want." "Merci, mon ami," Aoyama managed as Ochako quickly draped her arms around his arm around her shoulders and began walking away. Sego ran over to help them down the ladder before the trio made their way to their exit. Once they were back at the base building, both Ochako and Sego made sure to help Aoyama to Recovery Girl's office before heading off to join their classmates in the viewing rooms. They couldn't help but bounce in their step as she walked back. They'd passed the exam. Chapter 55. The Final Exams, Part 4. Fireworks!
In all the other battles, the exit gate was directly opposite of the start gate,
Shoto said as they approached. Their setting seemed to be a basic suburban area, mainly wide streets, but also alleyways that branched off to the side. This probably reflected the similar environment that the underground hero would be expected to fight in, which was just another thing in Aizawa's favor.
Yeah, this is so stupid. Aizawa probably chose us on purpose,
Shinso huffed.
Well, you said he'd taught you a lot of stealth stuff, so this should be easy, right?
Shoto looked at him as they stopped under the gate, waiting for the exam to begin.
No!
Hitoshi whined.
He taught me everything I know. He knows every trick I have. This is going to be impossible.
Shoto just rolled his eyes.
Come on, if you get stuck, just think of what Izuku would do. You'll be fine.
Hitoshi groaned and facepalmed. Following Izuku's example might be a good idea in theory, him being a world-renowned analysis YouTuber, but in practice, definitely not so much. The gate above them announced the beginning of their exam, and Hitoshi stood up straight. The pair shared a nod before running forward and immediately splitting up. Dodging through the alleyways was easy enough. Aizawa had trained Hitoshi in stealth and maneuverability. He was pretty sure he'd have a few minutes at least before he'd have to start being properly stealthy, especially with Shoto trying to distract their teacher. Despite them being a team, Shoto and Hitoshi's plan really didn't involve them working alongside each other. Their plan was simple, really. Shoto would distract Aizawa, while Hitoshi would book it to the exit gate. There was a loud crash that didn't come from too far away, and Hitoshi looked up to see massive spikes of ice looming over the field, casting looming shadows over the alleyways he was currently traversing. Shoto's massive attack right at the beginning had been planned. They needed a distraction to buy Hitoshi time, and Shoto's giant ice attacks were perfect distractions. In a perfect world where everything went exactly how they wanted, Aizawa would be trapped in the ice, allowing them an easy win. In reality, Hitoshi knew Aizawa was too smart to be trapped like that. The most they could realistically hope for was Aizawa going for Shoto after he performed a seemingly stupid move and made himself an easy target, which in fact was very much planned and exactly what they wanted. If Aizawa didn't fall for that, well, they could at least hope it bought Shinso time due to the giant glacier making the stage much harder to maneuver around. Regardless of what could be happening, though, the glacier was their first signal. It meant Shinso had to start being more sneaky and try harder to keep himself hidden because Aizawa could be on his way now.
So, I make a glacier a few minutes in, then what?
Shoto asked.
Well, that'll tell me when I have to start taking stealth more seriously first of all.
Hitoshi nodded.
We're hoping that's going to go for you first. You're okay at hand-to-hand combat, right?
Shoto looked at him unimpressed.
Of course I am. And Endeavor might have been a quirk-obsessed lunatic, but he's not stupid enough to ignore the need for basic combat. There was a moment of silence where the pair simply stared at each other before Hitoshi spoke up. You're really desensitized to this whole thing, aren't you?
If I were you, I'd be much more hesitant to bring it up. His partner gave a shrug in response.
I think telling the story to Izuku's audience helped. It's hard to be still sensitive to something the entire world is talking about. I guess you're right, Hitoshi said. Anyway, back to the plan. We're hoping Dad comes to fight you first, then what? Well, Sensei is good at quirkless fighting. I saw him at the USJ, and even with my training, I doubt I could last long. Shoto sighed. I'd probably be captured pretty quickly. Sorry. Don't worry about it. I kinda already knew that. Dad basically fights quirkless all the time, since his quirk isn't exactly physical, so he's probably better at quirkless fighting than a lot of pros. Hitoshi waved off his apology. I do feel bad that this plan basically has you being live bait, though. Are you sure that's okay with it? Dad might fail you even if I make it to the gate if you get captured. It's fine. Shoto shrugged. I can't see any other way to win this except fighting him head on and hoping for the best, so it would be better if one of us passes than neither of us either way. Good point. Hitoshi sighed. I guess we're going with this plan then. Okay, so we need a signal for if Dad captures you, or alternatively, if he doesn't show up to fight you at all, I need to know when he's exclusively coming after me. I'm not sure if you'd notice another ice blast on top of the glacier. I doubt I'd be able to create a second big enough. Shoto told him. Any other ideas? I know you don't like using your fire. Don't ask me to use my fire. But couldn't you just light a small one? Send a smoke signal? Or better yet, a flare of some kind? Surely that wouldn't count, right? Besides, your dad isn't even in the picture anymore. I don't really get why you can't use it. It's his power. I won't use his power. I don't even know how to control it anyway. It could be dangerous. Shoto made his excuse. Really? His power? Do you see him here forcing you to use it? He's not in control of your actions. He might have been passed down from his quirk, but quirks are made by the individual. I learned that a while ago. I think you need to learn it too, Hitoshi told him, his face serious before his expressions lightened up a little. Don't make me turn Izuku on you. Shoto huffed in what Hitoshi thought was a badly repressed laugh. He's not your attack dog. He might as well be when it comes to quirks. Hitoshi shrugged. The pair lapsed into a silent staring contest, and Shoto blinked first. Fine, I'll send up a smoke signal, but I'm not using it to fight. He sighed in defeat. Awesome. Okay. After that... Shoto stood at the foot of his glacier, ready to attack at the slightest movement. He continued to check in every direction, looking down every alleyway and checking above him for good measure. Hitoshi had told him to watch out for a surprise attack from above. He caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of his eye, to his left, and whipped around. Quickly he tried activating his quirk, mainly just to see if Aizawa-sensei was here, and to no surprise, it didn't work. Shoto dropped into a fighting stance, his eyes flicking from alleyway to alleyway. Seeing something grey coming at him from the edge of his vision was all that allowed him to dodge. Aizawa's capture weapon in time. Quickly standing up from his roll, Shoto turned to face his teacher directly. Aizawa was perched neatly on the edge of the roof, not bothering to attempt to use his quirk, as Aizawa jumped down from the roof and landed on the street in a crouch. Shoto mentally prepared for the fight that would ensue. Except there really wasn't much of a fight. The 2 minutes of actual fighting mainly just consisted of Shoto trying to dodge. He had been focusing too hard on the capture weapon and missed Aizawa moving forward to punch him in the gut. Shoto had tripped at the impact and found himself wrapped in the capture weapon before he could right himself. Soon enough, he was being dragged to the new location. You should work on your hand-to-hand, Aizawa told him as he tied Shoto to a lamppost with some other rope he'd gotten somewhere. Shoto grimaced as he was hoisted up and left to dangle, but didn't say anything. I wouldn't try freezing or burning the rope to free yourself, Aizawa told him. Shoto gave him a confused look before looking down to see that Aizawa had trapped the area with a load of little spikes. Well, that was just great. Aizawa didn't hang around much longer, and Shoto figured guarding him would be wasting time anyway, so Shoto was left to work out how to send a signal to Shinso like this. Being tied up in the air wasn't helpful. He'd promised to send a smoke signal, but there wasn't anything near enough for him to set on fire. He hadn't used the quirk properly in years, so he was lacking the control that would be necessary to light a small fire from a distance. Maybe he could try a flare, but his hands were tied and he didn't want to burn the rope. Those little spikes looked like they'd be painful to fall on, and he'd need to roll if he didn't want to hurt his ankles. He'd probably fall if that happened anyway. In theory, it would be easier to control his fire side in his hand, since it was the most practiced. Just like how it was easier to do big ice moves with his foot. He also knew that he could produce ice from any part of his right side, and he could slam his head into the floor and make a glacier if he tried hard enough. So it would make sense to be the same for his left, right? So theoretically he could set his foot on fire and hopefully send a fireball up into the sky to signal Shinso. Right, of course it just involved using a quirk that's faced over 3 years of disuse and basically zero practice, carefully enough that he didn't burn himself, the lamppost, the rope, or any of his surroundings, and actually send up a flare rather than just setting his foot on fire. Totally easy, right? Yep, Shoto could totally do this. This was fine. Gosh damn it! Why didn't Aizawa just leave him on the floor? The small voice in his head told him it was probably for this exact reason. He pointedly ignored the small voice for the sake of being annoyed. He did have to send up some sort of signal though. Aizawa had gone in the same direction Hitoshi had at the beginning, and he wasn't about to let his friend down over a quirk, no matter how worried about using it he was. And the way he was tied really didn't help his case though. A few seconds of struggling later, Shoto was in a position where he was pretty sure he wasn't going to set himself or anything else on fire. Focusing on only setting his foot on fire, Shoto concentrated on controlling his own quirk. Looking down to see he succeeded, he suddenly realized how stupid this idea seemed. Well, he was too far into the plan to go back now. Shoto kicked forward, making his whole body swing uncomfortably with the rope, and let off a burst of flames, hoping to kick a fireball into the sky. He looked up just in time to see a ball of flame burst into the sky like firework. Well, that worked better than expected. Now he just has to hang here and hope Hitoshi sees the makeshift firework. By estimation, Hitoshi was about 3/4 away from the stage when he saw Shoto's signal from back at the beginning of the course. So Aizawa was coming for him now. Great! Trying his best to stick to the shadows and continue moving quickly and quietly through the alleys, Hitoshi allowed himself to feel proud for his friend. He knew that what it was like not wanting to use a quirk you hate, and he was glad he could persuade Shoto to take even this small step. He was sure Izuku would be able to help him more, just as he was sure that Izuku was watching them right now and probably just as proud of Shoto as he was. After a minute of allowing himself to be happy for his friend, Hitoshi brought his focus back on the task at hand.
He was pretty sure there wasn't much further to go, but he couldn't let himself get comfortable. Aizawa could be anywhere right now, and he could move much faster than Hitoshi. He quickly began to turn his course back towards the center of the stage, so he could book it to the exit gate, currently thankful for the giant glacier that pointed in the correct direction. Hitoshi made sure to gear his course towards it. His sense of direction wasn't too bad anyway, which he was glad for, but it was all too easy to get turned around in areas like this, where everything looked the same. It was kind of surprising that he was still going the right direction to begin with. Hitoshi arrived at the main central road without trouble, poking his head out from the alleyway's entrance, and he quickly took note of his surroundings. To his right, he could see the towering wall of ice stopped around 20 meters away. To his left, the exit gate was around 50 meters away. Making sure to sweep his gaze across the rooftops as well, Hitoshi concluded that Aizawa was nowhere to be seen. That was suspicious in itself. After pausing for a few moments to see if he could hear anything, Hitoshi concluded Aizawa was waiting for him to make a move. Here he had two choices: either sprint for the exit or continue through the alleyways to get closer. The smarter option was probably to continue through the alleyways. He'd have more cover and more opportunity to hide, but that's probably what Aizawa expected him to do, which meant the smarter choice might actually be to book it, since his enemy wasn't expecting that. So booked it he did. He was so close. Really, he was barely inches from the gate when something wrapped around his ankles and dragged him backwards. Hitoshi twisted over, grabbing his own capture scarf and flinging it out towards Aizawa, while struggling to get his feet out of the binding. He had been so close. The teacher grabbed the end of Hitoshi's scarf in practiced ease and tied him to the bottom of the lamppost. Once he'd been reeled in, the bindings were so tight he found himself barely able to move, and the teacher had used Hitoshi's scarf instead of his own. He was an asshole for that. I mean, yeah, he was. Hitoshi had tried in a last-ditch effort to get his teacher to respond, but Aizawa knew his quirk almost as well as he did. Hitoshi had known it was over when his ankles were caught in that damn scarf. 10 minutes spent being watched like a hawk by his teacher later, the end gate chimed cheerfully, telling them that time was up. Aizawa untied him and they walked back towards the start gate, where Hitoshi presumed Shoto was tied up.
"You two did surprisingly well,"
Aizawa told them both as they took the bus back to the observation building. Shoto huffed, looking down at his feet.
"I didn't do anything, Sensei,"
he said.
"I just got captured right at the beginning." "That was part of your plan, though, wasn't it?"
Aizawa asked them.
"If you had managed to stall me for a second longer, I wouldn't have been able to capture Hitoshi."
"Shoto, you did perfectly," Hitoshi spoke up. "I'm really glad you managed to use your fire for the signal, and I was the one who wasn't fast enough."
"So that's what the firework was," Aizawa huffed. "Don't be too hard on yourself, boys. You might have failed, but I think you both learned something today."